actions, where we go, and kind of even who we're with. Have you guys ever, yet at this point in your lives, have you kind of known people that sometimes when you're around that person, you kind of act differently because of their influence on you, whether good or bad? Right. We're impressionable, you guys. We're all kind of malleable, right? We're like Play-Doh. And what we want to do is we want to get around people who kind of help to shape us into something really good and useful and God-honoring. We want to avoid those scenarios where we go hang out with people that, like when I was in 3rd grade, Jeff Nichols, man. Jeff Nichols was like the first dude, we talked about Vans earlier, he was like the first dude with like legit Vans. Not like South Houston Vans that I wore, they were called World Cup, and they were knockoff Vans, right? But he had legit like a cool pair, and he wore camo pants. He was also the first dude I saw to wear camo pants, and I was like, dude, Jeff Nichols is rad. He's really cool. He listens to good music. I think like his 19-year-old brother raises him, you know, like that, and a gray wolf. Like that's the only thing that speaks into his life. Jeff Nichols is rad, but Jeff Nichols wasn't good for me. He was speaking, you know, he would like just everything that he did in a very corrupt way was bleeding into my life, and it wasn't a very good thing. So that being said, where do I
don't know where to go from there.
We want to introduce this idea for you guys called guardrails. If you go out to construct a freeway, you're going to put like a big overpass up, right? And then you know what they do before the cars get out on the road? They put these metal guardrails up. Have you ever seen those? Guardrails are really good because if they didn't exist, guess what you do? You plummet to your death. Yes. But guardrails, what they do is they allow you to stay on the road, and maybe you scratch yourself up a little bit, but you stay safe. When it comes to dating, you guys, we want you not only to be able to date well as a Christian, we want you to like have a healthy constraints and a healthy perspective on dating. We want you actually to worship God through a dating relationship. So this is like setting the bar really, really high, okay? We want you to realize that just as you worship God through music and through giving and through going out and doing a mission project, you actually can have a dating relationship that actually worships and pleases the Lord. But you guys, again, we're setting the bar really, really high. So in order to do that, we've got to take into account specifically what Scripture says about how we conduct ourselves in relationships. Okay? So, maybe first and foremost, what does it mean to have guardrails in terms of what we say if we're to protect our hearts? We've got to be careful about kind of how we share ourselves and what we're willing to take in as well. And something that really influences maybe what we say is maybe what we watch. Case in point, do you guys listen to music? Do you guys watch movies? Have you guys ever watched a movie about a guy and a girl being boyfriend-girlfriend? Okay. Have you guys ever watched a movie about like people in college or like 20-something being in a relationship? Have you ever seen a movie about that? Most likely you have. There was this movie called The Notebook, right? Years ago. And people liked the man in the movie, and they thought he was cute. And they liked how he spoke to the girl and things that they said and did with each other, right? And so like it was a romantic, was it a rom-com, as the kids like to say? But it was like it was a movie about relationships. It was a romantic movie. Have you guys ever seen romantic movies? That's the kind of stuff when we think about what our eyes look at, we have to be careful. Have you guys ever listened to music about like heartbreak and about like relationships or anything? When you listen to a song, do you memorize the words? Sometimes have you ever had songs in your head like from a rapper or from someone in a very emotional relationship that then you go on and sing later and you're like, I don't feel these things, but I'm singing these things, right? I've done this myself. What we're getting at is you guys are exposing yourselves to movies and like media that is very like emotionally charged and like kind of adult stuff, and you're like 13, you know? Is this making sense? So part of this guarding might be to say, hey, like how do I want my dating relationship to be defined? If I'm, say, a 14-year-old and I'm dating another 14-year-old, I probably am not really feeling the things that like adults feel in a relationship, right? But there might be the tendency to kind of think about those things because of the movies that we're taking in. So, again, guarding ourselves to letting our eyes look straight forward and fix our gaze directly before you, knowing that there are things that we're seeing that may not be appropriate at this time.
I think it goes with social media as well, which you guys went to the social media one, right? And so, no, some of you did maybe. That goes on with that too, is not allowing the things that are right before us to influence our relationship with one another. Okay, I think it's really important to understand and to realize that just like God made you and loves you with an unending love, that boy or that girl that maybe you think is cute or that you like is also loved and created by that God with an unending love for them, okay? And so it's so important that when we think about setting these guardrails for ourselves, guarding our hearts, guarding what we see with our eyes, guarding what we listen to with our ears, that we have to realize that when we invite someone else into a relationship, that we are now responsible for guarding them as well. And that's a really big responsibility, right? That might be more responsibility than you're really ready for right now because you're still developing who you are as a person. Like, you just want to have fun with your friends, right? And so that's why when we're looking at these things, we're thinking, like when it says to let your eyes look straight ahead, fix your gaze directly before you. We're looking at things that might be down the road for you, okay? And that's okay. It's good to start thinking about these things today, so whenever you're in the position of maybe having a relationship with someone, you already have some things put in place.
Right. So at this point, again, what we would like to be able to tell you guys is, hey, we hope that someday you're sitting in our shoes, right? Like, we would love for you to meet each other when you're in junior high and have a healthy dating relationship, right, with the person that you're then going to marry, and to know each other as long as me and Mandy have known each other, which has been like about 57 years right now. But you know what? We're at this point now in our relationship because we had wise choices way even back then. And so what we'll kind of encourage you guys to do is to, when you think about what a dating relationship is going to look like in the future, begin to set up some rules for yourself, okay? Let's kind of use it like that. When I say guardrails, I'm actually saying like some principles or some rules that you guys are going to say, hey, you know what? I don't think that I should be alone with my boyfriend. Like, when he comes over to hang out at my house, you know, that might be a guardrail that you say. And I would say to you, that's a really wise guardrail, you know, like the door stays open, that kind of thing, you know, like you're not going to go off in your room and just be alone by yourself, you know, because parents really don't like that. Or when you say, you know what, when I begin to drive, I'm going to make dating more of a social situation where I'm going to have friends around as opposed to being alone with this person, okay? Are you following me there too? I can tell you stories though, when I was in high school and friends started kind of dating other people, sometimes they would date and they would become so involved in their dating relationship that we would never even see them as friends anymore, you know? And it was like, dude, where are you? We miss you. You know, you're never hanging out anymore because you're always with your girlfriend. It was almost like they were married, you know? Like, they spent every minute together. They started eating lunch together. They wouldn't even talk on the phone. They would just kind of breathe, you know, like watch a movie together. And just like, dude, you're not even talking. What's happening? That's the kind of stuff that you could kind of say from a friend's perspective where you're like, hey, that may not be the most healthy thing in the world, you know, because you're just spending so much time. Maybe you stop playing a certain sport, or you just kind of stop hanging out with your friends. So again, a good parameter would be to say, hey, I really do want to date because I think it's neat to kind of learn about somebody and have a special relationship, to learn how to be social with the person and communicate, to share your feelings, but I'm going to set a guardrail to say, you know, I'm probably not going to spend any more than this amount of time with this person during the week, okay? Or, hey, I feel like I might be tempted to do something that I shouldn't, right? That my feet will carry me somewhere that I shouldn't. So I'm going to always have a friend that's going to be hanging out with us. You know, I'm going to keep this thing social. Is that making sense? These are things that you guys can actually put into place even before you begin dating, you know? And I'm not saying that if someone says, hey, you know, should we... Because like when I was in junior high, I would get a call. I say this like it happened 30 times. It didn't. But this one girl had another girl call me to say, would you like to go with her? Like, and go with, you know, meant like you're dating. Not to like the store or anywhere specific, but like go together. Do the kids still use language like that? What do they say when you want to initiate a dating relationship? You want to be special friends? Do you want to date or whatever? You know, and again, like, well, I don't have the capacity or the ability to drive a vehicle, so I really don't think we're going anywhere. But we're going together. 2 minute warning. But to be able to say, like, again, we're really, at the beginning of that, before the relationship even begins, that you just say, well, hey, So I follow the Lord, like I'm a believer in Christ. I'm a Christian. So that means I go to church. And I have, in terms of dating, I really kind of have some principles that I really want to honor God with. And if you can tell that to a person really at the beginning of a relationship, if they're a believer, they'll be like, whoa, that's really awesome that you are so strong in your faith that you want to have this relationship honor God as well. But I can tell you guys, get ready that if you say that to someone who is not a believer, they're going to be like, well, I don't understand that. And then you can be able to say, well, this is part of my faith. This is what it means, because I really want to guard my heart. I want to honor God in what I do and what I say and where I go. Okay? And even that will have a way to be able to communicate to somebody who doesn't know the Lord what it really means to be a Christian. Okay? But if you already are in a relationship, it might be a struggle to then kind of come back and say, oh, hey, I got some guardrails. And they're like, what? You didn't talk about this early, So you really want to kind of be able to get some of these things in place. That's why it's so important, even before you begin dating, to think about what your guardrails are. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay.
Yeah, because I think just like what John was saying about with the car, right, being on the road, if the guardrails aren't in place first, that's whenever it becomes dangerous, right? And so what we're encouraging you guys to do is to look at it like, hey, before I even get started, I want to set some principles in place. But maybe you're thinking, I don't even know what they should be. I'm confused about what my guardrails should be, what my boundaries should be. And that's why, this weekend with your small group leaders, you can talk about those things. You can talk with your parents about them if you want to do that. You have Derek and Paige and Jackson who would love to talk to you about those things as well. We always recommend you talking to someone who's older, because sometimes talking to someone the same age maybe is just as confused as you are about it. And so it's really good to talk to someone who's a little bit older who can offer that wisdom to you, okay? And so, do you guys have any questions for us? And if you do later, you can ask us later too, in private, if you'd like to do that.
For sure. Again, we just want you to understand that you were never alone in this, okay? You have people that care for you and that have experienced good things in dating relationships and also have experienced some things that aren't good. So that would be another word of warning to say, hey, we really don't want you to make the same mistakes we made, okay? Because we want you to be even dating.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
How do you be friends with a boy or a girl?
Can you be friends? Because some even say that it's impossible. Would you say that? Can boys and girls be friends together? Just friends, not dating relationships?
I think so. I think that it's important to, especially at this age, that you are friends in groups.
Yeah. I think that would be a big key to that, would be to say that it is about, we want to keep this, we want to keep our relationships as social as possible, right? So that there's no temptation in being alone and in that. But for you to be very clear, I think also, you guys, never drop hints to a boy. Okay, can I just tell you this? Don't really drop hints, but instead be very obvious with your words. Okay, make eye contact and say, "Hey, listen, this is a guardrail for me," or you know what I mean? And do you understand? And give them a chance to say, "Yes, I understand," or "No." What I mean by that is, though, be very clear in your communication. And guys, this is the same too. Never really imply. I think in this day and age, when you send an emoji to someone and you think that means something, that can be lost in translation. So instead of kind of communicating in this cryptic way of using images and subtle hints, guys, be just completely honest, God is completely honest in His Word to you. It's very clear, right? I think that we as believers need to be very clear to people as well. And sometimes it's awkward, I know. Another thing that we wanted to mention too is in the use of technology, just to use technology or always be willing to text only what you'd be willing to say face-to-face to a person as well. Does that make sense? Sometimes I think you kind of have a bravery about you to text somebody or send somebody a picture that you wouldn't otherwise show them or say to them in person. And I just always think that's a bad idea. So always be very obvious and always be the same person, whether you're texting that person or having a real conversation. So part of that's too just communicating what your intent is and say, hey, I'm a girl, you're a boy. I just want to be friends. And be like, okay, then they'll get it. Then there's no more pressure. Yes, Mason.
Should we be dating people who are not at the same faith as us?
So that's what, I think that's, I would answer no to that, because I think that it's important that you, whenever you're seeking out someone else, that they are a believer too, because they are people who honor the Word of God. They're people who are trying to grow in their faith as well. And so they're going to have those same values as you have. And hopefully, just like you're working to guard your heart, if you're dating another believer, hopefully they're working to guard their heart as well. And you can have those conversations with each other about it. So I would say that you want to date someone else who is a believer.
And this also, you guys, never expect someone who is a Christian to act like one. Okay?
Wait, who's not a Christian?
Never expect a person who's not a Christian to act like they are a Christian.
There you
Thank
go.
y'all for being so sweet and nodding to what I just said erroneously. Like, you guys are like, yeah, John, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Benefit of the doubt.
Like, that's just it. I mean, you act like what you are, right? So, so if you say, well, he's a really nice guy, or like she's really sweet, you know, well, is she a Christian? Well, no. Well, okay, but know that they're going by their own power in that. And if they're nice and sweet and considerate, well, they're going by how they feel about you, but they're not going on how they feel about God. And my hope for you guys is that y'all treat people based on how you feel about God, right? And that is a total difference, man. That is miles away from treating people based on how you feel about them. So I just back what Mandy says up as well. It's easier really just if you want to date someone to date someone that knows the Lord. And guess what? You're going to still struggle. Just because you're a Christian and they're a Christian doesn't mean you're going to have a Christian relationship. We've seen it year after year after year. A guy who loves the Lord and a girl who loves the Lord. It's not like I never said as the youth minister, I'm so excited that you guys are dating now. Y'all are just going to be such a blessing and such on fire for God. What I say is, please be careful, because you are now getting into a relationship that will compete for God's love. It just will, you know. So
that's something, that's a question you can ask yourself: is my relationship with this person leading them closer to the Lord, or am I becoming something that's standing in the way of their relationship with the Lord? And that's such an important question to ask yourself whenever even in friendships as well, right? We tell our own kids, like, hey, are you being a burden or are you being a blessing? And that goes into this, in your friendships, in your relationships with a boy or a girl, that you're thinking, gosh, am I getting in their way of growing in their faith, or is my time with them encouraging their faith?
Yep.
That's good.
You're wise.
I think you said that first. I just copied you.
Cool. Is that it? Y'all good?
Get up for the Barnards.